can do for each other outside of the great family and the connection is giving gifts of that. And so my heart is always full because of the beauty of art and the beauty of music and the beauty of the appreciation that you give to it. So it's my gift is to always be able to, I guess, push that forward to the next after.
That's stayed in my memory bank. And keep it real.
Mm-hmm.
All right, number, we're gonna go backwards this way.
Yeah, we're going to Sean.
Come
Well, in the spirit of making sure that the cake doesn't burn down, I'll be brief, and I'm sure I speak for my other two brothers to come, but I can tell you that one thing that I know we all are grateful of is the spiritual foundation that you gave us as very young men, even when we didn't necessarily understand it or want to do it, or being in bed was a much better idea than waking up to have our worship. But the spiritual foundation that you laid is one in which, even as we grew older and we may have departed from it from time to time, it's always there. And the beauty of a foundation is that it's at the bottom, and you can always return to it. So for that, that is for me the biggest, I'd say, gift that I can attribute to my father.
I have to say this. It's on top of my list of spiritual situations that I would say testimonies. One thing I always wanted to do is be able to spend time with my sons before they leave the home. Jay took off, and each one of them did it beautifully. I mean, they all did it in style, but it always kind of hurt a little bit. Then, it was Gordon that took off. And I just had to put in at the song, kind of bring in the spiritual part of it. And George one morning, I didn't even know where he was going. And I was in the room having my worship, and he came in, and he touched me. I didn't know. I jumped. You know, when you pray like that, you're in your own world. And he said, "Dad, I'm going." I said, "Where?" He said, "Orlando, I told you." I said, "Well, let's have prayer first." That was, well, it took us 2 hours.
I think we should do it, right?
It took us 2 hours. And Sean said things that were beautiful. I'll never forget it. It's been part of my spiritual growth, the things that he said. And I realized that we used to kid about Sean. Where did he come from? How did he get here? Why was he here? In that moment, I realized why God put me here. And I can say that now again. That's the reason that God has put you here. It's a spiritual edification for not only his kids, but those that he's going to meet. And I see great things coming. Jay.
Blow this out, Dad. Let's blow it out before it starts.
Yeah.
Take your time.
There we go.
Jay and I were,
That's probably pretty warm.
Yeah.
That's gonna be hot.
That's gonna be hot. So next in line here is Gotti. We're gonna go in order of appearance.
Something that I remember that Dad taught us, he was telling us about a play that he was a part of, and the director was trying to give him some advice of how he was supposed to come into the scene and put down the briefcase because he was so angry in the scene. Dad's idea was to come in and slam the briefcase down because he knew that was the way he could show anger. director told him, no, I want you to come in and place it down softly. Didn't make sense, but when he tried it his way, filled with anger, he walks in and he took the briefcase and he put it down slowly and softly. And after he did it, he realized, you know what? That was more impactful. But the lesson that I took from that was my dad taught me, no matter how big you are, because my dad was a superhero. A guy with a 48-inch chest that could squat 500 pounds, 19-inch biceps, got a pat away. But he taught me at that moment to never be too big to say that you're sorry and to say that you're wrong. And anytime growing up, if Dad were to ever get upset about something, first thing that next morning, he'd come and he'd let me know, hey, listen, I'm sorry. I was wrong, and I love you. And that stuck with me, to know never be too big or too full of pride to admit that you're wrong, and to always let people know that you love them. So I take that.
Oh, wow.
With the Indian brother naturally good with
Okay,
electronics and
that
stuff. The last one is the best. You're first.
Jay,
So, I don't know how I say I took away from it, but I will share the most impactful moment that I had as a young man. I remember I was about 8 years old, and we were living in New York at the time. Dad had moved down to the shores to set up a place for us. And as a little boy, I was tasked with organizing the entire move from our house in the shore in New York. Mommy got sick, and it was me as 8 years old with Gordy, who was a baby, and Training, who was just a couple months old. And at that point, I remember standing in our driveway with the moving trucks coming in, and I was so scared. But the one thing that stood in my mind is being on the back of a sled in a snowstorm behind Daddy walking through the snow with me on the sled in his big boots, and he was just, I just remember that, just the power of him moving through the snow with me on the back of the sled. And that was the image I had as I was standing there waiting for these moving trucks to come in. So I've always told this story that I became a man at 8 years old, but I couldn't have done it without my dad's image of him walking through that snow. And I was alone. I was 8. Mom was in the hospital. I had 2 little brothers, but it was the vision of my father walking through the snow at the same house that I was now moving to bring all of our stuff down to Florida. And then to fast forward a year later, always sitting by the window in my grandmother's house thinking about, man, I'd love to see my dad, I'd love to see my dad. And I remember looking out thinking, I want to see Daddy. And I turned around and there was this image of my dad there. And I realized after I started getting lightheaded that it was actually Dad there to take us to Florida. But I often share that story as a little boy standing there at 106 Hudson Avenue with the world on my shoulders, and the only image I had was looking down that street and remembering Dad walking through the snow and he was plowing. You taught me to be a leader. Be a leader.
you listen to that.
Me?
Y'all know what I'm having, sir.
Yeah.
And video recording.
Well, this, nothing to say.
That's a great thought.
I could. All I could say is that as now that he's 90 years old, we have been together for 50 years.
15 years.
50, I mean, next,
Yeah.
maybe 50, but I knew him, so we have been together for 50 years. And he did rob the cradle.
truth be told.
But I love this man.
I'll cut this out of the
And he
camera.
has been a
I'll edit.
wonderful husband, good dad. We all have our mistakes and our faults, but God has blessed him, and because of him, we have all of you guys. And I'm so grateful that you guys are here together, and one day,